start just to welcome everybody here and really thank everybody for coming. It's terrific to see so many people here. I'm Angus Jennings, I'm the town manager, and the town has been working for the last couple of years on a corridor plan for 113. So we're really hoping we would get a lot of people here tonight, and we're just delighted to see so many people here. So again, thank you. I'm going to turn the presentation over to the consultant, Kevin Dandrade from the Engineering Corps, and his associate, Rebecca Dean. We have a number of town staff, department heads, board members, commission and committee members here in the room. And I just want to start by saying the program tonight is going to include a significant amount of informal time, so I don't want to shut down the nice discussions that were happening. There's going to be plenty of time for that later on. Kevin's going to give some slides, overview of kind of where we are in the process and where we're going, but then we're going to break into exactly what was just going on and kind of break out and looking at all these nice exhibits. So there's going to be lots of time for that, and then we'll reconvene to have more of a larger group discussion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Dandrade, and he can take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Angus. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Just by way of introductions, Rebecca and I work for a consulting engineering firm that's been hired by the town. I'm a professional engineer in the Commonwealth and other states, but also a professional traffic operations engineer. That's not just normal, regular motor vehicle traffic, but all modes of transportation. And really, what tonight is about is a continuation of what we've been doing and a continuation of what occurred almost exactly a year ago in the first discussion with the community, where some of these same exhibits were put out there, but the opportunity for all of you to contribute your experiences, and that's what we hope to continue this evening. Our office is just down the road, I'll call it, in Lawrence, but we do a lot of work in the Merrimack Valley, but across the state and across New England. But we are transportation specialists, and hopefully what you'll see this evening are some ideas that are stepped in fashion that will be able to be the framework for providing improvements along Main Street. As far as the agenda for tonight, we had this open house session for about a half hour, a little bit longer. We'll have a brief formal presentation, but then we have an opportunity to break into small groups. Because sometimes for those that aren't really comfortable expressing an opinion or a comment in a larger room, sometimes those ideas are easier to come out in a smaller table discussion. So what we hope to do is congregate around some of the tables after this part, grab some of the easels so that we can have a more focused discussion on whatever your topic of interest is. But then we hope to reconvene, really just so that we can all hear what may have come from the different groups, so that we can all appreciate the fact of maybe there was a topic that was discussed by another table that can better inform the others. But then again, towards the end of the evening, we'll still be around to be able to have the one-on-one discussions. So it's important to start with what are our goals? You know, what was our mission starting out on this endeavor? Really, it's a multifold. First, and our first experience in working with the town was focused on a safety study outside the Page School. So one of the primary goals is to first focus on some of our more vulnerable pedestrians or bike riders outside the schools, like the Page School, the Pipe State Recreational Area, and right outside the doors here. We also want to seek to improve crossings up and down Main Street. So we have a number of existing crosswalks that are there today. Some have older signs or older markings, but to be able to enhance those so that it's a uniform experience as you go down Main Street, and opportunities to enhance the visibility of pedestrians in those areas. But we also want to take a deeper dive. The town recently received a separate grant earmarked to do other work that's focused on town center. So we have some initial ideas to consider in town center, but there will be a deeper dive in the coming months. We also want to keep our eyes open for the longer term ideas for not just the crossings, but there are other opportunities for new connections that don't exist today. You know, there's a sidewalk along a good chunk of one side of Main Street, but not on both sides throughout much of it, unless you're in town center or in areas of short stretches like across from Pentucket here. We want to take a look at the context of what the scene is like on Main Street today, but we also want to contemplate what it may look like, whether it's the way Main Street's going to be used or other potential developments that may occur that might be a new crossing that's not there today, but one that would invite more pedestrians with other housing proposals. And who's involved? I think most importantly, and it's impressive to see another great turnout, most important part of this is you. For us to be able to hear your experiences, and although we may be professionals in what we do, we're not here every day to see the things that you see, how you use the road, are there different safety challenges or issues that you see that if you felt more comfortable, you might use it Main Street in a different way. But we work with, we're hoping to work with a lot of the different boards and commissions. We're working actively with a number of different municipal officials, Angus and his team, Christine and Butch and others, so that we, and Chief, to be able to get all different perspectives from a staff level that has helped us immensely to this date. Also our partners at Merrimack Valley Planning Commission and others that on a regional level have been looking at safety initiatives with the town as part of what they're looking at more broadly for all of Merrimack Valley. But another important entity and stakeholder is the entity that owns Main Street, which is the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, or MassDOT. So they own all of Main Street, Route 113 throughout the town limits, all 5 miles of it. So that is an opportunity, because it's a state-owned feature, to engage the state, and we have a representative here just listening in this evening, so they can participate in this community portion of it, which is understanding the foundation of need for what may come. But then we know that there are other users, user groups, local organizations, and other stakeholders, you know, all types of myriads, whether it's cyclists, equestrians, and pedestrians that use the different facilities, the different school administration teams, and then finally us, who learns from all of you and can provide guidance for ideas for what may make things safer. When we look at the regional planning process, the Merrimack Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization, that's the, decided to abbreviate it out there, it's a lot easier, MVMPO. These are the folks that make the decisions about what happens regionally. It could be in the terms of a general plan of needs for the region. It can involve work assignments like the Unified Work Planning Work Program in the lower left, all of which may shape transportation improvement program projects that actually get funded with a lot of federal funds to make good things happen. Mass DOT, who owns the road, or if there was, even if this was owned by the town, but they were petitioning for other state funds, federal funds, they would go through the same process. The important thing here is that, and you might not be able to read all these things, and kind of that's purposeful because there's a long list of things here. We just happen to be up at the very top left corner in the initial stages of what's occurring. So this is not anything that is something you're going to see next week or 3 months, but the things that are the foundation of what can be developed into a project or projects that move forward with hopefully state and federal funds. When we zoom in on a smaller subset of the earlier activities, and we know that we're in the planning and needs assessment, there are certain things that are part of that that are shown on the right. Essentially defining the study area, and at this point we're at the broadest, we're at all 5 miles of Main Street. Evaluating those existing conditions, pulling a lot of data, getting public input from all of you, developing some different alternatives for ideas for that can be stepped in, but also to review and refine those project attributes That's something that is done collaboratively between the town and the state to not only review the needs, but then the next step, which is formally scoping one or more projects. So when we look at the different planning tasks that we've been doing to date or that are upcoming, there's a number of them. But as you can imagine, there's a lot to look at in 5 miles of Main Street. So doing an inventory of where the sidewalks are, where are they not, where are the crosswalks, compiling that mapping on the high top tables here. For those of you that attended the meeting a year ago, that was more or less blank, but there was an opportunity to provide sticky notes or comments that we could write down that have all been aggregated. So that's kind of a live document of what you've all told us are your needs along the corridor. I believe the town has copies of that and may even have it on the webpage, but the reason we have them here is that we're continuing to listen. So we have other sticky notes and pens up there, so if there's something in a focus area of your own that's not already highlighted, please provide that note and optional for your name and contact information. We've been working with town staff and MVPC on the regional safety thoughts, that can be folded into what's happening more locally in West Newbury, looking at traffic data. So Rebecca's going to describe in a moment some of that data collection that we did do that also is an understanding of different attributes that help us to form ideas. But to review those ideas with MassDOT staff, and this is first done at the district level, so this is in District 4 of DOT, and we already had a virtual meeting to at least give a preview of the types of ideas that we're looking at now, and we look forward to the future conversations to drill down on more specific ideas. Ultimately, the goal is to, in the last bullet, to prepare what's called a project need or PN submission to the state that is the first step in trying to make it a formal project. A formal project that has a project number that then gets scoped with certain limits, types of improvements. Not the final design, but just the framework for what would be reviewed and designed subsequent to that. So with that, I'll introduce Rebecca Dean. She's one of our project engineers, and she's been working with me closely in every aspect of the data collection for this project.
Hello, everyone. So, as Kevin said, I've been working on this project very closely with Kevin and with the town staff for over a year now, and I would like to share with you some of the things that we have analyzed. I was part of that inventory that Kevin mentioned, where we drove the corridor and saw where the sidewalks were, where the crosswalks were. We also got traffic counts too, and analyzed the crash data. So over on those roll plans as well are the actual crash numbers for the intersections, and generally the corridor is pretty safe. It has about 1 crash per year for most of the major intersections or less, which is great. And the only exception is Bridge Street. It had about 13 crashes over a little over 6 years analyzed, which is about 2 crashes a year. And generally, the intersections, none of them are what would be considered a high crash location by the state, which is awesome. So we also had to look at things like speed, of course. So we took automatic traffic recorder counts, or ATR counts. Basically, for a 24-hour period, those count the vehicles, count how many cars there are, of what type, their speed. And here's some of the data right up here. So on the west end, just outside, near Break Hill Terrace, we counted about 7,600 vehicles. These vehicles were traveling at or below 46 miles per hour for that 85th percentile speed, which just means that 85% of those vehicles are traveling at the speed or lower. So for this case, as I said, 46 miles per hour. It is a 35 mile per hour zone, 20 miles per hour during the school zone times. And of course, there are some school-related traffic and peak hour conflicts, I'm sure, And then when you start traveling further to the east, we have near town center. These counts were taken near Daily Drive, and these had 7,800 vehicles about. This is a 30 to 35 mile per hour zone, and the 85th percentile speed was 44 miles per hour. In town center, this has higher pedestrian activity, so those types of counts were also taken. And then towards the east end, near Emery Lane, this is a 40 to 50 mile per hour speed zone, but the 85th percentile speed was found to be 53 miles per hour. So I'll leave that up for a second. So, of course, I have been working on this project, but I don't live here, and I don't see it every single day like you guys do. So we would love to hear some input from you guys on things like this that you would like us to focus on. Things like pedestrian connections and crossings, you know, where are the sidewalks potentially missing that you would like to see a sidewalk? Is there a location that needs a crossing or needs crossing upgrades? Things like accessibility, is there anywhere where something may be out of compliance, like a pedestrian curb ramp? Bicycle accommodations, traffic calming measures in those areas of high speed. Is there anything that can be done to reduce those speeds? Targeted intersection improvements, targeted roadway safety measures like guardrails, roadway lighting, pavement quality. All of these things can be considered, but of course, a ton of other things too. If you have ideas, please share them with us. We'd love to hear it. And as Kevin mentioned, we do have sticky notes for you to leave a comment, but also come and talk to any one of us. Send an email. If you have an idea, we want to hear it. So I would like to turn it back to Kevin now.
Thanks, Rebecca. So as we looked at some different focus areas, as we've worked with town staff and heard from you at the meeting last November, it was kind of zeroing in on at least the initial framework for half a dozen different focus areas. The first of which is where we are at Pentucket Middle and High School, so this area of the school zone on the westerly end of town. The second area was in the area of town center, Maple Street. Third area is in the area of Bachelor Street and the town offices. As you go further east, focus area 4 is in the area of town hall and training field and library. Further east from there is the Page School and Pipe Stave. And then the sixth location is the area of Ocean Meadow and the way to the river. These are just initial thoughts for the focus areas based on the things that we've heard and certain things that we've observed. But things like the existing crossings, are there areas for future crossings as I've described before? Are there opportunities for town center upgrades, whether it's, and we have a focus slide for that, that might involve traffic calming, or future sidewalk or bicycle facility connections that may not exist today. Two of these are in progress. They're at a higher state of concept developments. In the case of the Page School, many of you were likely at the special town meeting, but the town approved the construction funds for, and I'll show you a graphic of that as well, to implement improvements, and we're in the final stages of review with DOT. First, this is hot off the press, so we called it drafting in the works. We have a parallel contract with the town to look at targeted improvements right outside the doors here, focused on pedestrian safety. We've been out here to observe school-related traffic and certain things that we've shown on the concept. Some of the words may be difficult to see, but I'll point out some of the relevant features. On the left, looking at new sidewalk connections to cross the school driveway itself, a new sidewalk that would be along the school frontage, so in front of the fields, and a brand new crossing in the area of the pizza shop, Nick's Pizza, to cross pedestrians in that area, knowing it's obviously a good destination for those that are hungry. So one of the other things that drives the location of certain features is the fact that just recently, the Merrimack Valley Transit Authority, or MEVA, introduced bus service here in West Newbury. It's a wonderful thing so that there's an option for transportation outside of the typical car. So there are now stops, and we look to make those stops more robust and accommodating for different platform areas, so it's more obvious where the stops will be. But apart from those sidewalk connections, etc., we're also looking at features like the image that's shown in the lower right-hand corner, which is a pedestrian warning device that when you push the button, the lights start going, and it's called a rectangular rapid flash beacon. I have another better photo on the next slide, but that is an enhancement feature that draws more attention to those that are trying to cross the road. So again, this is conceptual nature. Another option, which can always be phased, is a new sidewalk connection that would go essentially from the parking area out to this other proposed sidewalk on school property. So as we look at, and on the right side of this slide is a better photo of what that RRFB, rectangular rapid flash beacon, is. This is actually from Newburyport, from Low Street. This is widely used. It can be solar powered, it can be hardwired if there's a nearby utility pole, but they're a reliable source of enhancing that visibility of pedestrians in the crosswalk area. In the area of town center, some of the graphics that you'll see on the flipboards, but up here as well, and there's a little key up top, but the orange are existing crossings that exist today that could be enhanced or upgraded. But then we also might have one like the light blue one, which might be a new crossing someday, depending on if there's any housing proposals in that area. Anytime you have different new developments or residents in the area, that might change the origins and destinations for where people want to cross. Within town center itself, these are just a few initial ideas that could be considered. As I mentioned earlier, the town received an earmark to move forward with some other more detailed planning, to advance the discussions focused in this area. They could include things like trying to look at reorganizing some curb cuts, so some of the broader areas that is wide open and a wide expanse of pavement that's not necessarily inviting to walk across. Is there a way to better define that? Could it possibly even open up more parking off the road, or provide opportunities to work with the town for leased parking so that there's parking opportunities for all the different areas in town center? Are there opportunities to consider different types of newer traffic control? So the pedestrian signal that's there, that's almost always green unless somebody pushes the button. Up in the upper right is more of the newer technology that's used that remains dark except when it's pushed. These are very common in moderately used pedestrian areas. They're called hawk signals or pedestrian hybrid beacons. So same idea as the flashing warning assemblies, but more enhanced and more control. So when you push that button, it actually starts flashing yellow, then it goes to a solid yellow and a solid red, which requires traffic to stop. And at that point, the walk signal comes up. There's typically very good compliance with these because, as you can imagine, with some of the signals that are on all the time, people could get callous to them. There's always something illuminated up there. But with these types of features, it's good because once somebody pushes the button and it's been dark for a while, now it's illuminated and draws better attention to that traffic control device. There are a lot of different needs in the areas, but there's other opportunities like potentially reorganizing the throat of Maple, as it comes into Maine. It's a pretty wide expanse of pavement, but also not compromising how the highway department has to manage snow. So how can we look at those areas to possibly improve crossing areas, consolidate the movement so it's safer for traffic, but yet not make it onerous for maintenance. But we also know that in this area where there's a number of businesses, it's important to retain as much parking as we can, but also keeping our eyes open to, is there an area where there can be agreements and relationships between property owners and the town to look at common parking areas while we look at other enhancements within the street. As we move further east to focus area 3, this is in the area of the town offices and Bachelor Street. We have 4 existing crossings that exist today. This is an area where I know there's been some heightened needs and concerns in this area, but there's also great opportunities. There's great opportunities along Main Street, but also for things that might connect to Main Street in the future. When we look at the same type of device that could be done to enhance certain crossings, we also may find that maybe the 2 right in front of town offices in the middle could be consolidated into one that might be joined with other sidewalk improvements on the south side or the bottom part of the road right in front of the town offices, where today it's discontinuous, but there's also challenges with accessibility where those with accessibility needs can't really get from Main Street up into the town property directly. So there's opportunities there for a number of different needs, but it also might involve different ideas for consolidating in the purpose of enhancing or drawing attention to it. There's other opportunities too with not just, again, what might involve Main Street itself, but other potential grant programs. There are a number of things out there where it might not need to involve municipal town meeting funds, but other things, and the town's been very good at this into submitting grant applications. But there's a number of other programs out there that might also provide the ability for other connections, like Bachelor Street, to connect from Main down to the fields. That's maybe not the focus of what we're talking about tonight, but then could be other opportunities that can be linked together to really get people to where they want to be. As we move further east to focus area number 4, in the area of training field and town hall, there's a great opportunity here. This is, has anybody used the crosswalk right in front of training field, crossing to town hall? Okay, who feel, raise your hand if you feel really comfortable crossing at that location. Anybody?
That's awful.
Okay, yeah. So this is actually what you see, oops, different photo, it's out of order. The crossing itself is on a curve. There's the flashing warning symbol there, but it's one that is, has sightline challenges. As we look at opportunities here, we might have the opportunity to move that further west to a better vantage point where it's safer for those that are crossing. It's on a straighter section of roadway. It happens to be right in front of the library, but it also provides an opportunity where it could also provide other placemaking opportunities directly in front of Town Hall that if anybody's parked right in front trying to back out on the Main Street is also very challenging and unsafe too. So there might be opportunities there for green space improvements, placemaking improvements where it's a place for people to gather, where now that crosswalk is kind of in the middle of a sea of pavement. So on the right, you can see that the cement concrete pad that alerts those with visual impairments to cross the road is within the area of the parking lot itself. As we move further east to focus area number 5, this is the Page School and Pipe State recreational area. This is the area, as we mentioned earlier, that is at a higher state of design. We are in what we call 75/100% design submittal that just went in earlier this week to DOT for the final major review in hopes that they release a permit for the town to do the work here, the work that's been funded by a special town meeting. We're looking forward to having these improvements in place, but this is one where, as we listened to the needs for the community, it wasn't just about pedestrians crossing, but also the equestrian users, so that this is an area where, my mouse isn't working here, but if you can see the red dot. Everybody see it okay? So we have new sections of sidewalk shown in yellow, a new highly visible crosswalk here that's at a defined location. Right now, it kind of goes diagonally in the middle of the two driveways. So move it outside of the driveway to an area that is now has curbed sidewalk that goes up to the Page School property. But next to sidewalks on the south side, coming off Pipestave, we're actually proposing a gravel area that can be used by those on horse with a separate crosswalk next to it, and Rebecca's a rider as well. So I think your quote was, I don't think my horse would ever cross the ones with the lines going across, so we have a different style crosswalk here that goes to another gravel area for those that are using the expansive network of equestrian trails behind the Page School. As part of that device, that rectangular rapid flash beacon that you can push as a pedestrian, we're actually planning on 2 different push buttons that are up on higher on a pole, a separate pole, so that if you're on horseback, you can push them and not have to dismount. So we're trying to think of things that are accommodating for all types of users in this area, but we're excited to see this move forward in hopes that the town can bid it over the winter and then construct it next summer. Again, this is in works, it's been funded, and we're on our way. As we move further east, although this was the last formally identified focus area, it doesn't mean it's the only focus area that remains. But looking at Ocean Meadow, that trail crossing, there's a lot of history at this location, dealing with easements through other properties, where should the trail come out, but the Ocean Meadow development is down here in the lower right. Different opportunities for trails, but where to cross becomes the question. There's different ideas that have been formulated to date. Could it be something where it goes further to the east? And that location is shown as more or less at the crest of the hill. If you're familiar with the area, just east of the Wade of the River, there's that hump in the road, and it's kind of tough to see over it, but if you can have the pedestrian crossing at that peak of the crest, that would maximize the visibility. But there's also an opportunity where if you went a little further to the east, there's actually an existing driveway curb cut that used to be there from years ago to get to Main Street through existing fields. It's something that's not easy. There's a lot of process involved with changing where these things could be, but our goal is to try to look at a crossing area that's safe and one that's functional and usable for a myriad of different users. So although there's no design, we don't know which side of the road it would go down, but having a sidewalk and or gravel path down one side of the road with a well-defined crossing so they can get to the Wade of the River and head up towards the Merrimack. Beyond those focus areas of more or less the crossings, we also want to talk about what might be future connections that are more linear along Main Street that the town may want to consider as other successive projects. Ones that may be longer term in nature, but ones that also provide opportunity. So if you know that Main Street today, throughout much of its 5 miles, has pretty wide shoulders. You know, that area on the side of the road where it's outside the double yellow and the white line, they're pretty wide shoulders there today. Sidewalk on one side. You've got utility poles mostly on one side, and then they might crisscross, but the idea being that when you look at future projects, we're going to have to consider different things that are state policies, like MassDOT's Complete Streets policies. At their fundamental nature, they want to be able to accommodate all types of users in as robust a manner as they can. But MassDOT also knows that each project is unique in and of itself. This could be a short stretch or it could be a longer stretch of roadway that's considered. But if you think about it, how might we use the roadway differently, the right-of-way differently tomorrow than we do today? There's an opportunity, like is shown in the graphic, that you could narrow up those shoulders, still have standard 11-foot wide lanes, but maybe the shoulders become down to 3 feet instead of the 6 or 7 feet. Well, that extra space could be used possibly for a wider area off the road for different walkers and bikers, for something that we call a shared use path. Again, it's the way of potentially using the same out-to-out, as I call it, of the use of the footprint of the road today, but in a different way that not only invites a myriad of different walkers or bikers, but may also change the context of how traffic uses it too. So that gets me to the target speed, and this is something that our industry is celebrating for a change that MassDOT has very recently made, as recently as about a month ago, in how they're offering design guidance to us as consultants, or even different projects that are done by DOT themselves. And it's the idea of having a target speed. Up till now, and for most of my career, you measure the speeds that Rebecca talked about and say, you've got that 85th percentile speed where people are going well in excess of the posted speed limit. But that's what traffic's doing, so you're gonna design your roads to that speed, which means that you might open up curves, make it flatter, make it more inviting for speed, ironically. But now what DOT has said is, we're gonna allow a target speed approach, which says, although that data is really good and helpful from a safety standpoint, it doesn't mean that we can't change the road. So if traffic is going 43, 44 miles per hour now, is at 85th percentile speed, well, maybe we want them to be going 30 or 35. So now we can design to that lower speed. And essentially, at the end of the project, the idea is that the speed limit signs get yanked. And once a project is completed, then they reassess the speeds based on that new design that's inviting slower speeds. It's now more intuitive to what you would hope would occur, which would then rein in those higher speeds to something that's more moderate and mitigated. Again, there are certain things like the visual narrowing of the road that can still accommodate trucks safely, but that the visual nature of reducing the shoulder widths can have a way of reducing speeds just by itself. On the right side of the image is actually a rendering that we just used at a design public hearing for Route 133 in Andover. Again, a lot of characteristics are similar to Main Street, West Newbury. You've got beautiful street trees, you've got historical homes, you've got stone walls, but the idea is that we shrunk the road and added space to the side. You might find that as we received some comments last November and since, there are different areas where people were saying, I'd really like a sidewalk connection. I'd say, really like to be able to walk my child to the Page School. Or I'd really like to walk to the ball fields. Now, we show different areas as just one idea on the east end of town, where you might go from the town offices in Bachelor Street and the fields that are here, and have something like a shared use path or a sidewalk, but some other facility that can then go to training field. But then you could extend that project and go from training field down to the pipe stave area. Maybe there's an off-road path that can get up to the school property. Beyond that, there's obviously some very steep slopes and other things that are more challenging, but the point is that you can always start with some portion of a project and then continue it from there. Typically, we always recommend in your area of greatest density or activity, like a town center, you can always start there and then continue it in the future. These are just ideas. We would love to hear more from you or answer questions about some of the ideas that we've started to consolidate, but this is not the end of the process. This is not the end of the discussion with the community. As I showed in that process diagram, we're right up at the beginning. but this is really the foundation of what you see as the gaps in infrastructure or the safety needs that can inform those future projects. So as far as our next steps, there's an opportunity where we can split into smaller groups, grab the different exhibits, talk in more detail, but then we'd like to come back and understand some of those general themes. Then following tonight, we review what we heard and what's written as comments, or what may come and what has already come via email, to see if it refines any of those focus areas or thoughts about projects or project need. Ultimately, we'll assist the town in preparing an application. It might be other successive applications to try to establish different projects that can be done over time. So that is a process in itself, but it really gets shaped with what you might discuss with us this evening. So really, that's how you can help. You can help us understand how you use the road, what you see as needs, what you'd like to see for future projects, but continue to be involved, because this is what makes community. So thank you.
To hear from if there were questions or comments or suggestions that came out of your small group discussion, or things that you shared in there that you wanted the whole group to hear. And Rebecca has a microphone, so if there's anyone, and that's really as much for the recording that we have going on as it is for those here in the room. If there are people with questions or comments.
How realistic would it be to monitor the speed or change the speed limit? Is that a far-fetched idea, or is that something we can consider on Main Street?
Why don't I start, and then maybe Kevin, you can. So what Kevin shared toward the end of his presentation tonight of this target speed design is a brand new thing, so he knows about that. That's what I've always heard in my career, is this 85th percentile, which is they do the traffic speeds and whatever people are going, that is what the state is going to tell you to post. This is a brand new idea, brand new policy. Prior to that, I would have said it's really probably not realistic to expect changes in posted speed. Certainly not significant changes, but maybe there is something with this new policy that changes that.
Can you hear me? So the state would still consider the 85th percentile, but the idea is that whatever's designed can try to be designed to a lower speed. If you were to say, just with the existing conditions of Main Street that are out there today, to try to reevaluate the speed limits, I'm not sure that would be fully beneficial for the town. And the state, it's the state's roadway, but I think what we're finding is that based on the speeds that Rebecca described during the presentation, many of them were 5 to 10 miles above the posted speed limit. So based on the current criteria, there would still be the reluctance to change it in any way other than potentially up. And I don't think that would necessarily be the case. But the most beneficial thing is that as the town shares with the state the need, and as the state contemplates different design projects, it doesn't have to stay the way it is. So I think with anything that's done for future infrastructure, I'm very optimistic about the opportunity where you can change what Main Street looks like and how people use it so that it affects lower speeds. You could make a request to the state, or the town could make a request to the state to evaluate it, but based on what data we've already collected, I'm not sure that would result in immediate changes. I think the best benefit is to say, let's look at infrastructure changes that force the drop in speeds.
Given what you just said, and the work that you're going to be doing around Page School, would that have any sort of calming effect for people coming into town, down the hill, and then up the hill? Because it's 40 miles an hour, and by the time they hit the bottom of the hill, it's 50. So is there, you talk about a target speed or a calming effect, could that be extended down the hill, or even coming out of town? Is the speed limit coming out of town down that hill
So the question was, with what we're in the final design stages at the Page School for doing the crossing improvement, could that have a traffic calming effect, or could that be continued further up or down Main Street? Where that's very finite in its crossing, we're not really changing the width of the road, we're not narrowing it, we're just defining the edge better. It's not necessarily going to calm traffic, but what it's going to do is alert traffic to the presence of pedestrians or equestrian riders. So if there was a theme of improvements, that was longer in nature, that would be more likely something that would change speed attributes. But just the crossing itself, it's going to make it safer, more identifiable for those that are there, but it's not necessarily going to calm speeds when there's no other activity. It's just, it's very defined crossing location.
So I think Camille was asking about enforcement, not about design. So that's a question for the town, about just enforcing speed limits on Main Street. Did you guys consider those, the ones that tell you how fast you're going and remind you to slow down? Sometimes, because when I see those, if I'm going too fast, I always slow down. So was that considered as part of the thing?
So we call those driver speed feedback signs.
Yeah.
Those are absolutely an option that could be readily implemented. That's something that when we look at different crossing locations, there's low-hanging fruit along the corner. That would be another opportunity for low-hanging fruit that doesn't cost a whole lot to do, that the state could potentially consider in multiple locations, because if you just have one, people might slow down and then ramp up again. But if there's a theme of them along the corner, and it's more of a consistent alerting, because sometimes it's just comfortable to drive fast with wider shoulders, and people don't realize how fast they're going when they're following the car in front of them, probably too closely. But having those, I can tell you that we're working with the town of Andover, and they put them on a lot of different residential streets, collector roads that are becoming increased cut-through traffic. But it does have a way of reminding people in real time of what they're doing. So that's absolutely an option that can be considered, and that's something that we could easily wrap in as recommendations that should be part of that low-hanging fruit.
Hi, I speak for the horses. In addition to the wonderful crossing that you've engineered very nicely, and that Rebecca pointed out to me that you do have a post with a pedestrian and equestrian activated light on both sides, so whether you're crossing from the Page School driveway or from the ball fields and equestrian areas, you're helped out there. The other place, though, that I would suggest, Jen and I both serve on the Mill Pond Committee, and developing the trail that crosses Main Street next to the solar array gets us down into Riverbend. And I think many of the people here probably have explored those Riverbend trails. They deserve to be better used than they are, but it's a beautiful asset to the town. And to have a crosswalk there, I think, is something that ought to be considered.
So Deb, so you're talking about kind of in this area here, yeah.
Where it says potential future, where that crossing comes down to Main Street.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There's a little trail out of the middle jump field there, above the lower field parking lot for heading down to Mill Pond. That would be the logical place.
Would the town consider selecting places throughout the town after study of lowering the speed limit to 5 miles an hour? I taught on the 13 and went to the river. It's a crest there, 5
Kevin, can you speak to whether rumble strips are something that the state would consider as a traffic slowing device?
It is a traffic calming device. I will say that the perceptions can be different if you live right next to them. Because with different speeds of those that are going across them, I think some people might try to figure out exactly what tone they can make and how high of a tone they can make as they're going across them. But it is a feature that can help mitigate some speeds. In general, Route 113, Main Street is an arterial roadway, rural arterial, so it has a certain function within the state's network of roadways. They might consider certain things in certain areas. They might consider certain warning placards, so even though you have the actual posted speed limit, there may be other areas because of a crest or sag in the road or intersection where they can consider what's called advisory speed limits, so that you get the yellow warning sign for whatever's coming, like an intersection ahead. That could be complemented with a advisory speed that might be lower than the speed limit just because of the specific characteristics that may be there. So our smaller group had some discussions about the area of Way to the River, Ocean Meadow, the crest of the hill right there. Depending on the actual sightline characteristics coming out of either of those intersections, that could be a candidate for at least alerting people, here's the posted, but in this area because of these specific attributes, we advise you to go slower. It's a warning, it's advisory, not regulatory, which means the police wouldn't typically ticket for doing it, but it's something that might help influence lower speeds.
One thing that may be helpful just as a follow-on, and Chief Dwyer, if I can pull you into it. I think if we just hear briefly from the chief, because obviously they've got, finite personnel resources. There's 2 officers on at any time. And I know speed enforcement is a big focus of time for the department. So if you can just kind of help, how do you balance kind of the Main Street enforcement with all the other traffic enforcement and all the other things your officers are doing? Just because as far as, someone who drives through town a fair amount, I feel like the speed enforcement, like there's always a cop. I feel like in the region, people know in West Newbury, like you're probably more likely to get ticketed. When I first moved down here 6.5 years ago, everyone told me like, don't speed in West Newbury because you will get ticketed. So I guess just how do you balance with the resources you have to be responsive to some of what we're hearing on traffic control?
Yeah, so we use really a lot of the data points that we've gathered through the years, over the last 30, 40 years. Many of these roads still exist. At one time they were dirt, now they're paved. But even right here at Ocean Meadows, we know that this stretch of roadway is high speed. You're doing 50 miles an hour, it's coming down 40 miles an hour, then you're going down Pipe State Hill. So we know that people are generally going to be speeding there. Excuse me. Center of town, we talked about it earlier, there's a lot of data points that a lot of pedestrian traffic, a lot of bicyclists come through there and have to share the road with motor vehicles. So we take that information, and through the years, we know where we can selectively enforce. I think everybody knows now Rocks Village Bridge. That's another location. We now know that there are a lot more issues with commercial vehicles. So we try to, throughout the 24-hour period, put police officers in those locations to make sure that we can make the best use of that time. Thanks.
And actually, one more thing. So maybe tell about the trailer that you guys just got with the what did you call it, Kevin? Driver
speed feedback.
Yeah. So and how will that be deployed? What can people expect?
Yeah, so we have a speed trailer now that we're going to be using. We used to have one that almost looked like a big dolly. We got about 20 years out of that, which was really nice. But this type of equipment actually gives us additional data points. So we can look at we can capture 24 hours, 48 hours, and see what the peak travel times are for, say, for instance, Main Street in front of the Public Safety Building. So again, we can take that information and say, our day shift is going to focus on the commuter hours, because we see people traveling 48 maximum speed and lot more use next year when the good weather comes back.
And that's, just to be clear, that's a brand new piece of equipment the town just purchased, so that's gonna be, you know, another tool in the toolbox in terms of, you know, speed controls.
Yeah, we're really excited to have it, and it's a lot easier to deploy. The original piece of equipment we had to load on a trailer or in a pickup truck. This one we can tow it, so it's just going to make it a lot easier, and it's solar powered, so it's going to give us a lot more opportunity to keep it out instead of having to bring it back and charge it every so many days.
Dare I ask how much did that cost?
That was $11,000. We're going to keep it nice and cool.
We're talking about speeding. Is there ever going to be anything done with the amount of speeding that comes out of Newburyport into West Newbury? I mean, the velocity of the trucks and the motorcycles is unbelievably and so unsafe for the residents who live on that area.
I don't know that I would have anything to add to that beyond what Chief Dwyer said. It, you know, really comes down to kind of resources and enforcement, you know, manpower to do the enforcement. So I know that, I mean, I see where some of the speed traps are. I don't know if you do get people as they're coming into from Newburyport, but yeah, I mean, you just spoke to the, you know, the way to the river area where it does go from 50 down to 40, and that's a known area where you kind of see drivers going faster. So, but it does come down to resources, because obviously, you know, speed enforcement is one part of what the police department does, but it's one part of, you know, much larger job that they do. So I know they do the best they can with the personnel that they have.
Angus, isn't that 50-mile-an-hour stretch, isn't that in Newburyport?
I'm not sure where the town line is. I know it's, yeah.
Because it turns to 40, but as you're coming over the arch, when it's 50, then that's West Newbury, it's not Newburyport.
Are there other, yep,
One quick comment.
sure, Rebecca's got the mic.
When the gentleman was talking about those signs that flash at people that their speed is over the limit, I personally feel that is something that could really be valuable. And I know why that would be valuable, because almost on a daily basis, or at least maybe 3 or 4 times a week, I live right out of the square, I yell at people, and I really yell at people, and I'm always doing, slow down! And I'm gonna tell you, they go, they actually, you can see them going, oh my God, I didn't know I was going that fast. You can see the look on their face sometimes, you know? And it's a huge area, and I think that kind of equipment may really be valuable.
Yeah, I agree with that. It definitely affects me as a driver, you know, when you see that, so.
I'm just looking at this slide from the beginning with the Main Street West End traffic at Break Hill, where the speed limit's 35 and the 85th percentile is 46. That's going through the school zone. And honestly, since the school has improved and added lighting, there's a lot more sports and a lot more little kids there, and a lot more traffic attracted, which is wonderful near the school, that they're getting the use out of it. However, the speed as you come down the hill toward the school increases to 40. And I guess I'm assuming, is there 2 different speeds, one coming in and one going out of West Newbury? Because it's listed at 35. I thought it was almost 40. Isn't there a way that the school zone can be changed to more than when the school gets out at 2 something, it starts at 2:15? Because we have sports and all these activities going, it just seems that it's an excessive speed for an area where there's a high amount of children recreating and going across to nets and things.
So it is concerning. There are some very high speeds. I think when you look at the relationship between the posted and the actuals, it's because it's inviting, as we talked about before, where the road is designed to not necessarily slow anybody down, it's inviting for speed. I think with the idea of the timing of the school zone, it's actually very highly regulated. Even though DOT owns the roadway of Main Street, any school zone on state route or state highway requires the state's approval of any of the changes. But there's actually state statutes that are very rigid, changes of actual policies specific to school zones for the time before and the time after. I think that's one of the reasons why we're looking at the other safety measures out there, because outside of the normal arrival and dismissal period, when there might be sports going on, etc., we want to make sure that those other crossing devices, which can be used 24/7, can help alert drivers outside of the other school zone, the formal school zone timing. But we'll take a look at it. So the idea is that as we look at on one of the exhibits, it showed that not only here along this frontage, but out at Page School, part of what we'll be looking at is the timing and the functionality of the different school zone flashers. Are they working, are they not, are they timed correctly, are they not, so that we can suggest changes that are part of the state permit to get that blessed and then enacted. That's formally part of what's going on at the Page School, because just as things occurred over time, there's actually no record of a school zone there in front of the Page School, but the equipment's been there for decades. So we're going to be replacing a couple of those devices there, and then making sure that the permit is in place so that the state knows the attributes of that. But your point is well taken, that it's outside of the actual flashing school zone, the lower speed limit, that duration, there's other needs at other times, but that's really why we're focusing on other types of crossing enhancements that can be more of the all-day type of treatment. So we'll just really will be hanging around.
Great. All right, so Butch and Christine and Kevin and Rebecca and I and select board members will be here for the next while. So if people want to continue to talk or look at the exhibits, we're happy to stay. There are still a lot of sandwiches, so by all means, grab some food. And thank you again, everyone, for being here. And the town website, there is a town projects page where we do have updates on this initiative. We'll post the information that was presented here tonight. We'll put that up to the website. We'll continue to post updates there. And when there's significant new information, we typically send out a news and announcement. So if you're not subscribed to the town website, you can subscribe to news and announcements. And we also post things to the town Facebook page. So, we'll be sure to get the word out when there's kind of